two purchases for 20 bundles of money. They had sold their brother Joseph into slavery for 20 pieces of silver. Now they're required to pay to the treasury of Egypt not 20 pieces of silver, but 20 bundles of money. Do you see how chickens come home to roost? Sometimes the payback for sin is worse than the original sin itself. Very interesting concept. Verses 13 to 14. Take your brother also, arise, return to the man. May God Almighty grant you possession. May El Shaddai watch over you. The God who offers protection that no human agency could ever provide. He's your God. He's there to watch over you. Verse 14. So that he will release you and your brother Benjamin. As for me, if I'm bereaved of my children, I'm bereaved. It's the way it is. Great decision, Israel. Good line, my friend. He's borrowing from perhaps a buddy of his. At least he was a contemporary of Jacob's. His name also starts with J. Does anyone know what I'm talking about? Job. This is when Job lived. And maybe he heard the words of Job, chapter 121. The Lord gives, the Lord takes away. Blessed be the name of the Lord. When you could make that statement about a loss or a potential loss in your life, then God's going to call you God reigns. God reigns. But as long as you're clinging on to that job, or whatever is important or precious to you, your name will be heel grabber. Well, the reason God works in this man and is willing to do a miracle and to unite the family together again is because he's willing to give up his Benjamin. And so the question of the hour, oh, you could guess it, can't you? What is your beloved Benjamin? We all have one. Boyfriend, girlfriend, best friend. For many young mothers, many older mothers, the one they love and worship is the one born from their loins. Will you let go of that child for God's glory? As long as you cling on, I promise you, you'll never be happy. Could be a hobby. Could be a habit. Could be your money. But we all have a potential beloved Benjamin. And at some point, I could guarantee you, God's going to whisper in your ear, will you let him go? Will you let her go? Will you let it go for my glory? And if you say yes, God will make you happy. Not miserable, but happy. Happiness is right around the corner. Now, it's going to take a few weeks for us to see. So don't you read ahead. We're just going step by step. But happiness, so much joy is waiting in Egypt, but Jacob has to trust by blind faith. He has no evidence of what God's going to do. He has to trust this is the will of God, and he works the same way in every one of our lives. If we give up the Benjamin. He was worried that if I give up Benjamin, my son's going to perish. He didn't know he'd be cherished by his own brother. So everything good is about to happen as the Father's fine gifts offered in faith lead to point 3, the fabulous treatment of a favored son. Verses 15 to 16. So the men took this present. They took double the money in their hand in Benjamin, and they arose and went down to Egypt and stood before Joseph. When Joseph saw Benjamin with them, he said to his house servant, bring the men into the house and slay an animal and make it ready, for the men are going to dine with me at noon. Could you even imagine the emotion as he sees his brother Benjamin for the first time in 25 years? The last time he saw his brother in the flesh, he was a toddler. Now he's probably 27 years of age. Kill the fatted calf. Bring in the best. We're all eating together tonight. The man did as Joseph said. Brought the men to Joseph's house. The men were afraid because they were brought to Joseph's house. It's because of the money that was returned in our sacks for the first time we're being brought in. He may seek occasion against us, and he will take us as slaves, and he'll take our donkeys. He's going to get us at dinner. That's what they're thinking. William Shakespeare in King Henry VI wrote, suspicion always haunts the guilty mind. Guilty people are suspicious of everyone and everything on the planet. So if you meet a person who is overly suspicious of everything, you have met a guilty person. A person who hasn't confessed their sin, or they haven't believed that God has forgiven their sin. It's a sign. The guilt won't allow them to enjoy God's grace. And that's the way it is, see, with the guilty sinner, the grace of God for them. They hear the good news. Jesus was offered up for your offenses. He is the ultimate detergent to completely cleanse all your failures. He will wash you clean. He will provide a home in heaven. It's a gift. It's free. I'm offering it to you. Now, the first time I heard that presented to me, I jumped at the offer at the age of 12. You know why? Because I may not be smart, but I'm not an idiot. That makes sense. But there are billions of people on the planet today who say, no, 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 no. I will choose any religion, and that's what America is doing today. We will embrace any religion, but we will reject the grace of God. You know why? It's too much. They can't believe it. Yeah. Too good to be true. You don't get something for nothing. My daddy taught me that. Well, that may be true in life, but it's not true when it comes to God. And it's not for nothing. This is not something for nothing. This is something for everything. Someone paid a price that you and I will not understand until we reach eternity. Don't ever tell an unsaved person grace is cheap. Grace cost God everything. It's not too good to be true. It's so good that it has to be true. And if you're here today and you're still toying with that idea, make the decision before you leave those doors to give your life to Jesus Christ. He's the only one to wash away the sin and to remove the suspicion and guilt which governs your life today. Verses 19 to 20. They came near to Joseph's house steward and spoke to him at the entrance of the house and said, "Oh, my Lord, we indeed came down the first time to buy food." They're so frightened. They're so suspicious. They're stumbling over themselves. They're overly apologetic. It's like the meek little man who was in a restaurant and he timidly touched the coat of another man who was putting on an overcoat. He said, "Excuse me, sir, but do you happen to be Mr. Bruce Smith?" He said, "No, I'm not." The little man said, well, I am, and that's his overcoat you're putting on." No need to be timid if it's your overcoat. No need to be timid if you didn't take the cash. But it's not about the cash. It's about the guilt of the way they treated their brother 25 years ago. So many things that you and I say and do today have nothing to do with the present. It's unresolved issues from the past that God in His grace is bringing up, so we'll finally face it and finally ask for forgiveness and finally fell it once and for all. And this is what Joseph is doing. He's bringing his brothers to forgive the past. But of course, they're absolutely petrified. Absolutely petrified. Verse 21, it came about, we came to the lodging place, we opened our sacks, behold, each man's money was in the mouth of the sack, our money in full, we have brought it back in our hand, we've also brought back other money in our hand to buy food, we don't know who put our money in our sacks, and I just love his response, be at ease, don't be afraid. Your God, the God of your father, has given you treasure in your sacks, and I had your money. Your God of grace hovered over you and watched you and gave you the money. That's true. Joseph said, I had your money. That's a lie. But all secrets will eventually be revealed. He will tell them in the chapters to come. Now, what's amazing is that verse 19 tells me that it's Joseph's house steward who is speaking these words. He's an Egyptian. He must be a saved Egyptian. Joseph did some evangelism when he was there in Egypt. And through his illustrious reign, he was leading people into a walk with Yahweh. I just love that. I love this man. Verses 23, or actually verses 24 through 30. Then they brought Simeon out to them at the end of verse 23. Then the man brought the men into Joseph's house, gave them water, washed their feet, gave their donkeys fodder, then prepared the present for Joseph's coming at noon, when they heard that they were going to eat a meal there. When Joseph came home, they brought into the house to him the present which was in their hand and bowed the ground to them. Remember that bowing, he said? He didn't know they were going to bow over and over and over again. Every time Joseph walks in, he goes, there's the dream, there's the dream, there's the dream. The dream that God gives you today, hang on to it. It may take 25 years, but God's going to make it fulfilled. That's the grace of God. I think he smiled every time they did it. That's so wonderful. Verse 27, then he asked them about their welfare. Is your old father well, of whom you've spoke? Is he still alive? Oh, they said, your servant, our father, is well. He's still alive. Again, here comes the dream. They bowed in homage. Wow. You think God has a sense of humor? Verse 29, and he lifted his eyes and saw his little brother Benjamin, his mama's son. He said, is this your youngest brother of whom you spoke to me? He said, oh, may God be gracious to you, my son. And then he ran out, for he was deeply stirred over his brother. He looked for a place to weep. I remember a time years ago, and I was watching a movie with a group of people, and there was a scene that came up on the movie that was designed by God for me. And this scene brought back a real, just a whole series of painful experiences from my past, and just grabbed me by the throat. And I started to cry, and it was waterworks. I had to dismiss myself from the meeting. I had to go into a bathroom, and I could not stop the tears for 20 minutes. It's cleansing, but it was also exhausting. It's exactly what Joseph is feeling right now. Then I did the same thing. Verse 31, he washed his face, and he came out and controlled himself and said, serve the meal. So they served him by himself, and then by themselves the Egyptians ate with them by themselves, because the Egyptians could not eat with the Hebrews, for that's loathsome to the Egyptians. They didn't like the Hebrews. They considered them lower class. So you got Joseph at one table, you got the servants at the second table, and then you got the Hebrews at the third table. Verse 33. Now they were seated before him, firstborn according to his birthright, youngest according to his youth, and the men were astonished. You know what the chances are of seating 11 boys in their perfect honor and their perfect role according to their age group? It's next to impossible. Some man has calculated it about 40 million to 1. And so for them to watch with perfect order, and many of these kids were born like 9 months right after another. You start looking at the history. So they didn't look any different in age. And he sets them down. He knows all their ages, one after another. And these boys, you think they were guilty before, they're freaking out. It's Twilight Zone. Who is this guy? The third person of the Trinity? I mean, he knows everything. They're blown away. He knows more about their family than they want him to know. Then he took portions to them from his own table. But Benjamin's portion, wow, 5 times the amount as any of them. Now, there's no way that Benjamin could meet all that food, right? It's like the cook who said to the man, do you want me to cut this pizza into 6 pieces or 8 pieces? He said, you better make it 6. I don't think I could eat 8. Well, there's no way that he could eat 6 or 8 pieces of pizza or was ever offered to him. And he wasn't expected to eat that. It was just a gift of honor. You know, in ancient times, Spartan kings received double portions of food, and Cretan kings quadruple courses of food. And Joseph said, I'm going to beat that by giving him 5 times the amount of food. I'm just going to load it on and pile it on his plate. You say, why would he do that? Well, for a couple reasons. Number one, it's baby brother Benjamin, and he hasn't seen him for 25 years. But there's a more important reason, and it's God's reason. And we've been seeing that all through this story. He is still testing those brothers. Have they reached the place of sadness and forgiveness? Do they realize they've been wrong? Have they changed their nature? And so what he does to Benjamin is what his daddy did to him with the royal coat. Remember? They wanted to kill him because of the coat. So let's dump it all on Benjamin and see what he does. And you know something? There is absolutely no jealousy. So Joseph is really close to revealing himself, but don't get too excited because it won't be today and it won't be next week. But after that, whoo, it's going to get so good. It's a great story. I love it. And so verse 34 ends that they feasted and drank freely with him. Joseph is so close to revealing the truth about himself to all of his family, but they're still in the dark. Now listen, from their punitive perspective, from their suspicious, guilty minds, all they could see is what? Negative, negative, negative. You know people in life that are negative? I wonder if it's because of suspicion and guilt. I don't think grace-filled people are pessimistic by nature. What do you think? I think a grace-filled person is just naturally optimistic, believing the best. But when you are living with suspicion over a sin that you committed or over a sin that you did not believe that Calvary could cleanse, then you're going to see everything negative in your life. And the kindness of God will end up confusing you instead of encouraging you. They're confused, they're negative, but is it negative? No, it's all good. It's all good. He brought him into the house. He told him, I don't need your money. You can keep the money. You get to eat with me. And I'm not only going to perish Benjamin, I'm going to cherish Benjamin. And it's all going to be wonderful and well if you will trust me. And this brings us to the lingering lesson. Here it is. Let's say it together. Don't let guilt blind you to God's grace. Let's say it again. Don't let guilt blind you to God's grace, because I do. And I bet you do as well. Let's say you lost your temper. You said something stupid. You did something dumb. It's sin. You know it. You blow it. Okay. Now what? Number one, confess it to God. Number two, make it right. And 90% of Christians stop there. They never get to number three. Get over it. Let it go. You say, I'm not sure how to do that. Dave Tersini, would you stand for just a second? Talk to him. He'll tell you. I've known Dave for 20 years, and this man lives a guilt-free life. If he does something wrong, he asks for forgiveness, and it's as if it never happened. Thank you, David. It's a gift of grace that God has given him, and I pray that he would give you the same ability to live in freedom, not in fear of yesteryear, once you've made it right with God and others. You just let it go. Because God wants to take that which is terrible, and he wants to turn it into something absolutely beautiful. About 130 years ago, a group of fishermen were relaxing in the dining room of a Scottish seaside inn. They were trading fish stories. It's like surfers trade surfing stories, fishermen fish stories. And this one man was gesturing widely as he depicted the size of a fish that got away. And he swung his hand as to how big the fish was, and his hand caught the serving maid's tea tray and knocked that hot teapot and sent it flying against the beautifully whitewashed wall. Bam! And it exploded and left an irregular, ugly, brown blotch all over the wall. It's like your life and mine. We don't mean to do wrong, and we blow it, and the world knows it. Everyone stops in the restaurant. The guy's feeling sheepishly guilty. The owner walks up and examines it and says, "We're going to have to repaint the whole wall." "Not necessarily," says a man from the back of the room. "Let me work with it." The owner thinks, "I have nothing to lose." Okay. The man pulls out pencils and jars of linseed oil and brushes, pigment out of an art box. He begins to sketch the lines around the stains and dabbing in the pictures and the colors throughout the splashes of tea. And as everyone in amazement in the restaurant watches, all of a sudden, the image of this enormous, majestic stag with the great rack of antlers begins to emerge. The man pays for his dinner and walks out. But before he does, he signs his name to the bottom. Sir Edwin Landseer, the world's most famous painter of wildlife. In his hands, a mistake became a masterpiece. That's God in your life and mine. You're ready to trash your life. You're ready to throw away that bad experience. And God says, leave the stain. I will work with your stain. Let me get out my colors, my palette, and I will draw together the disjointed blotches of your life, and it will be your greatest masterpiece.